What's up, guys? Skip Africanus here, and welcome back to another Cartridge Week episode. This week featuring perhaps the worst variant of ammunition to ever exist, the dreaded Dominican Republic 50 BMG Surplus. And I am not exaggerating when I say that this genuinely is probably the worst ammunition to be created and then sold. Like, when I was told this stuff had a bad reputation by the guy I bought it off of, and I did like 2 seconds of research on it when I got it. But having actually, finally sat down and looking into it, I am genuinely shocked that this stuff even exists in the first place. It is just that bad. But anyways, before we get any more into this cartridge, we'll, of course, do what we always do and take a look at the head stamp, which on the top we have 50, that stands for the caliber, 50 BMG, and on the bottom we have a 56 for the year this cartridge was made, 1956. Now, the R&D, I couldn't actually get a 100% confirmation on what that was for. I'm pretty sure it's for something like Republica Dominica or something like that, but like I said, for whatever reason, there were certain aspects about this cartridge that were just hard to find. Anyways, going into the tip color actually real quick, you will typically see the yellow tip stuff, which signifies an armor-piercing round. However, kind of not really with this, as the steel used in the core is more closer to a mild steel, like that which is used in normal ball ammo. Of course, there is a variation with the steel hardness among these projectiles. You will notice that as we go on this cartridge, there's a variation in a lot of things among the projectiles. And not just the projectiles, but also everything else about this cartridge. This looks like a normal clean 50 round, I assure you. That when I start naming off things wrong with it, you're going to be shocked. So now this stuff, from what I can gather, started coming into the United States in the 90s. It had practically all sat under absolutely horrid conditions, being unsealed and in a humid environment, just sitting under these conditions for who knows how many years. The casings and jackets would, of course, become severely oxidized, and most importantly, a lot of the powder in these casings would just flat out degrade over time. Now, what I imagine happened, and keep in mind, I have to speculate here because I wasn't able to find a lot of info on how exactly this stuff came down here and all that, but what I imagine happened was the military saw the horrid condition all their surplus was in, and, naturally figured it'd be a good idea to just sell it off to make newer, better stuff. Now, you, of course, will sell cleaner-looking ammo a lot better than rusted, older-looking stuff, so what they did prior to selling, and this part isn't a speculation, by the way, is they tumbled at least the real nasty-looking stuff and would repaint the tips to obviously make it appear much nicer than it actually was. So now, side note with that, they didn't tumble and repaint all their ammunition. They did a good portion of it, but you will see quite a bit that it came out to the market. The paint's fairly corroded, and then everything else is just in poor condition. So what that tells me is there was kind of like a bare minimum to when they would start to care. So that means that this round was actually looking a lot worse than, stuff like this. So I would say the cleaner ammunition you have, the worst ammunition you probably got. Now, when this stuff came in, it did not take long for people to figure out just how bad this stuff was. At the worst, you would get a dud, and that was if you were lucky, because this stuff could get very dangerous to shoot. Now, if you thought, well, Skip, surely you could have just, bought it for components, right? Like, the bullet and the brass are still good, just pull those, take the powder, throw new powder in. Well, I've got some very shocking news for you. So the best way to go over this is to go from top to bottom, starting with the bullet. Now, I don't know how well this is going to show up on camera, but the bullet is asymmetrical. And also, it appears that the heavy layer of paint, I can kind of see it doing it. You can see rather than sort of rotating like that, how it should, it's got a little bit of a spin to it. And again, that is the projectile that it's seated wrong in the case. And one other thing to point out too, there's also variety on that. You will see some bullets that look even worse when it comes to just how asymmetrical they are. Now, from there, it doesn't, just stop there. It gets worse. Now, I don't know if you can also hear this. I'll try and... It's hard to not shake it hard enough to where the powder moves, but you can hear inside, you can hear like a click. And a lot of, well, practically the majority of this ammunition, the cores are actually loose, like they rotate inside of the jacket. So when you shake it, you will actually hear a little click. That's the core bouncing around inside of the bullet. Yeah, I don't know if I can really get it to pick up on the sound thing, but yeah, the core in this example and in the majority of other examples, again, they're bouncing around inside the bullet. Now, two things I'm not sure about with this current example, but would also be issues you would need to look into if you attempted to reuse these bullets, is bullet diameter and bullet weight, because yes, with the currently brought up QC problems, of course, there's going to be some variation in bullet weight and diameter. Now, from there, we'll go to the brass case, and from the get-go, these are Berdan Prime, so there is really no reusing these, but most importantly, however, the brass casings are notorious for having case neck ruptures and splits at the bottom of the case. And of course, add to that, case neck separations are also on the table. Now, of all things not to reuse with this ammunition, the obvious one is powder. However, I will make mention that to add to all the previously mentioned problems, not only do you get that powder degradation that I mentioned earlier, but of course, the powder charges are heavily inconsistent, with quite an unlucky few having some bad experiences with some rounds that were way hotter than they should have been. Now, I did mention primers, but it seems with those, you might actually get lucky and they'll end up being a dud, as the last thing you'd want to do is set one of these off in your rifle. Now, with all that being said, maybe there's somehow a worse cartridge out there, but so far this one definitely takes the cake for the worst cartridge that I know of, and luckily this stuff appears to have pretty much disappeared off the market for the most part. As I know, I've only ever seen like single rounds of it for sale for collection, arguably costing more than when this stuff was imported. But yeah, it seems if anything, this stuff is unfortunately off the market. I tried looking to see if I could buy some in any sort of quantity online, but they were all old, out-of-date listings. But anyways, I think that is going to do it for this week's Cartridge Week episode, featuring perhaps the worst cartridge variant to ever exist, the Dominican Republic 50 BMG Surplus. I hope y'all enjoyed the video as much as I personally enjoyed making it. I will see y'all next time.